Hi, my name is Odessa. This is not a story I ever wanted to tell, but sometimes silence protects the wrong people. And on that day, standing at the edge of a mahogany furnished room filled with people I used to call family, I realized something. They had written me out long before they erased my name from the will. The room smelled like old money and newer betrayal. A crystal chandelier hovered above, flickering as if it too were unsure of what was about to unfold. Gold-trimmed invitations had summoned every extended blood relative and social parasite within driving distance. And I received no invitation at all. Just a whisper from an old family friend. "You should come! You need to see what they've done." When I walked in, every neck turned. The air tightened like a noose. My mother's lips barely parted. "You came," she said. Not in relief, not in welcome, but like someone commenting on bad weather. She was dressed in muted black, pearls around her neck like tiny chains of polished gilt. Her hands were clasped with my younger brother, Elliot, whose custom-fitted suit seemed too large for the maturity he had yet to earn. "I wasn't sure I should," I replied, my voice even. "No need for theatrics," she muttered, then turned her back. The lawyer stood near the fireplace. His name was Mr. Grantham, a longtime associate of my father. He held a leather folder like it was filled with glass. "As per Mr. Lionel Waverley's final will and testament," he began, voice stern but respectful, "we proceed with the reading now." I stood in the corner, clutching the small notebook I always carried, the only thing I inherited from my grandmother. As Mr. Grantham read, my name never came. My breath slowed. My ears rang. "To my beloved wife, Caroline, I leave our estate, savings, investments, and family holdings. To my son, Elliot, I bequeath the vacation home in Santa Fe, the lake property in Maine, and 100% share of Waverly & Co. No Odessa, not even a footnote, not a single legal syllable to indicate I existed. It was surgical, clean, intentional. There was no dramatic gasp, just the dull hum of silence like everyone expected it. "Wait," I said softly. A few heads turned. My mother's eyes didn't flinch. "There has to be something else?" Mr. Grantham hesitated. That pause, that half-second, was my first sign that something was off. He cleared his throat and looked at my mother, whose eyes narrowed. "No," she said before he could speak. "There isn't. He made his choices." "But he told me," I began, but the words cracked under their own weight. "He told you a lot of things, didn't he?" she interrupted, calm but cruel. "None of them are on paper." Laughter fluttered from an aunt who always drank too much Chardonnay. My uncle shifted uncomfortably. Elliot looked at the floor. I felt something inside me tighten. Not rage, not sadness. Something colder, recognition. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a mistake. It was a removal, a well-planned erasure. "Your father loved you in his own way," my mother added, "but love doesn't pay property tax." That was it. That was the line. The one meant to seal the moment, slam the door, silence the protest. But what happened next wasn't planned. A hand brushed mine. My uncle, Calvin, soft-spoken, retired Navy. He slipped a folded page into my palm and whispered, "Don't let them steal the last of him." I left the room without a word. Out the side door, into the chill. My breath clouded in the air. My hands shook, not with sadness, but with clarity. I unfolded the page. It was a draft, a scanned version of an early will. My name was there. Beside it, property in Vermont, transferred in trust. He did leave me something, and they'd made sure it never reached me. The day after the will reading, I stood in front of my childhood home like a stranger contemplating trespassing. The house hadn't changed, still wrapped in white colonial siding, still pretending to be peaceful. But I had changed. Or maybe I'd simply peeled back a layer I wasn't supposed to see. The brass knocker was cool against my knuckles. I let it fall once, twice. No one answered. No surprise there. So I used the key. The smell hit me first. lemons and lavender, mother's usual chemical cocktail for staging emotions. The hallway was spotless, but the family photos on the wall had shifted. My father's pictures were either smaller or removed entirely. Elliot's graduation photo was front and center. And me? Gone. It wasn't anger that flooded my chest. It was grief, and not for myself. For the version of me who still hoped to be wanted. Upstairs, my old room had been transformed into what looked like an unused yoga space. Mat, empty bookshelf, a dusty essential oil diffuser. The walls, once painted with my sketches, were now whitewashed, literally and figuratively. It was like I'd never lived here. I opened the closet. My old journals, the ones I thought she'd thrown away, were in a plastic bin, carefully labeled Storage Odessa. It felt like an archive of a person who'd died. But it wasn't just what she kept. It was what she chose not to burn. She knew I'd come back, someday, and she wanted to control what I found. My phone buzzed. Uncle Calvin. You get the paper I gave you? I did. Don't trust Grantham. He's not the enemy, but he's scared of your mother. They all are. Why me, Calvin? Why'd you help? Because your father trusted you, and because I saw what your mother did to you as a kid, and I did nothing. I stared at the journals. I remembered being 10 years old, writing to no one because the people around me had already decided who I was supposed to be. You're too sensitive, Odessa. Why can't you just agree like Elliot does? Don't be dramatic. He needs more support than you do. That last one always came after Elliot failed something. A test, a girlfriend, a DUI that never made it to court because Daddy cleaned it up. And I was the cautionary tale they used to teach him what not to marry. Downstairs, I heard the front door open, then close. Footsteps. She was home. I didn't panic. I didn't hide. I stood in the hallway, waiting. Caroline Waverly emerged from the kitchen, holding a reusable shopping bag and a bottle of imported sparkling water. She froze when she saw me. You're not supposed to be here, she said calmly, but her voice dropped half a register. I used my key. I should have changed the locks. Then change them now. She set the bag down. What do you want? A conversation. She laughed, sharp, brittle. You think this is a movie? You walk in, I feel guilty, and everything is tied up with a bow? No, I said. I think this is real life, where people carry decades of silence like shrapnel. There was a flicker. I saw it. Behind her perfect posture, behind the pearls she still wore even when doing errands, there was a moment of hesitation. You were never meant to find that draft, she said. Ah, so she knew. I know. It was his first version. He changed his mind. He always did. No, I said. You made him change it. That's different. The pause this time was longer. Then she smiled. But it didn't touch her eyes. Your father was weak. You always believed he was this moral compass. But he was scared of conflict, scared of you too. That landed. Not because it was true, but because I remembered how he avoided arguments, how he never once defended me when she tore into me in front of Elliot. He was afraid, she continued. You were too much, too emotional, too unpredictable. You scared him. No, I said, stepping forward, heart hammering. He was scared of you, and you projected that onto me because I was the only one in this house who ever saw what you were. Her smile cracked. Get out, she whispered. I will, I said. After I tell you something. I took out the folded document. Her eyes flicked to it, instantly recognizing the layout. Legal, real. He left me something you didn't know about, a property and letters. Actual letters. Not the storybook you've been selling people. She stepped back. Not in fear. She didn't operate on such a basic currency. No, she was calculating. You won't win, she said softly. I'm not trying to. I'm just taking back what's mine. Then I left her there. in that sterile, curated house she'd built on lies and polished smiles. I could feel her watching me walk out, but she didn't follow, because this wasn't the end of the game for her. It was just the first time someone else rolled the dice. The road to Vermont curved like a question Odessa wasn't sure she wanted answered. The fall foliage was in its final flare, bleeding crimson and rust along the mountainside, as if nature itself had secrets it couldn't keep anymore. She drove alone, no music, just the sound of tires slicing over damp asphalt and her thoughts pacing like a restless animal. The address her father left was handwritten in block letters on the back of a weathered envelope. The property hadn't been mentioned in any version of the official will. It didn't exist in the public record under her father's name. Only a quiet trust with no digital footprint and one beneficiary. Her. Odessa pulled up to a wrought iron gate, partially hidden behind overgrown hedges. The lock clicked open when she entered the 4-digit code her father always used for his safe. Elliot's birthday. Ironic. The gravel crunched under her boots as she stepped out of the car. The house was nothing like the Waverly estate. Where that place was sterile and curated, this one was rugged and lived in. The siding bore signs of weather and time. The porch creaked under her weight. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt guarded. Inside, the air was cool but clean. A faint scent of cedar lingered. The floors were polished hardwood, and everything had been maintained with quiet intention. She ran her fingers along the edge of a reading chair beside a lamp. A book of poetry sat face down, halfway through. Her father had been here recently. On the kitchen table was a brown folder, marked with her initials in her father's handwriting. O-E-O-W. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first item, a notarized deed in her name. The second, a letter. If you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to tell you in person. And I'm sorry, Odessa. I didn't protect you the way a father should. This house was mine before Caroline, before the boardrooms, the tailored suits, and the silence I let build between us. I bought it with the only honest deal I ever made. And I put it in your name because I needed to leave you something untouched, something that couldn't be revised or erased. Her eyes burned. She set the letter down before she smeared the ink. She moved through the house in slow, deliberate steps. Each corner was curated differently. Less perfection, more soul. On the mantel above the fireplace were pictures of her as a child. Not the ones from public events. Candid ones. Her in rain boots, covered in mud. Her asleep on the couch with a book on her chest. She hadn't even known those photos existed. And then, in the hallway, tucked behind a linen closet door, she found a small built-in safe. Same 4-digit code. It swung open with a mechanical sigh. Inside were more letters, some written to her, others addressed to lawyers, including Mr. Grantham. Legal drafts, affidavits, and notes scribbled in margin script. But the last envelope wasn't addressed, just sealed in wax. She cracked it open and unfolded a single-page letter. If anything happens to me, it wasn't natural. Caroline's reach is deeper than you know. She forged my signature on multiple investment transfers. She used shell accounts. If you dig, you'll find them. If you choose not to, I understand. But whatever you do, don't let her bury you like she buried me. Odessa sat on the edge of the hallway bench, the letter shaking in her hands. Her father hadn't just left her a house. He'd left her a warning. The grief that rose in her chest was jagged and burning. But beneath it was something colder, sharper. Not vengeance, yet. But clarity. He'd been afraid, and for good reason. As night fell, she built a fire in the stone hearth. The light danced on the walls like ghosts stretching their limbs. She sat cross-legged on the rug, with the folder and letters spread around her like a crime board. She made 2 piles, evidence and sentiment. One for prosecution, the other for healing. And then her phone buzzed again. A number she didn't recognize. She answered. A woman's voice. Crisp. Professional. Ms. Waverly, this is Cassandra Hume. I work in corporate audit law. Your father contacted me a year ago regarding an internal investigation. Odessa's heart jumped. He gave your name as a secondary contact, in case anything happened to him. I believe we need to meet. She hung up slowly. Her father had built more than a house. He had built a trail, and now it was her turn to follow it. The frost hadn't yet touched the Vermont woods, but the mornings whispered of it. Odessa stood by the window, a coffee mug in hand, and her father's final letter replaying in her mind like a haunting refrain. Don't let her bury you like she buried me. She didn't cry anymore. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because her grief had metabolized into purpose. Across the table lay the documents she'd sorted into two piles: personal truth and legal leverage. She slid the legal stack into a fireproof briefcase. The personal stack, the photos, the letters, the remnants of the man she once believed in, she placed gently into a wooden chest. She locked it, set it in the closet, and told herself, "This is not armor. This is weight I no longer carry into battle." The phone buzzed again. Cassandra Hume. "Ms. Waverly, we've reviewed the transfer documents from your father's accounts. There are signatures, several, that were either forced or fabricated. And there's more." Odessa leaned in. More? A pattern. Caroline moved funds through at least 3 shell corporations based in Nevada, all tied to offshore entities. 2 have been dissolved. 1 still active. And my name? Removed retroactively in 2 filings. That is not legal. Odessa exhaled, slow, deliberate. Do you want to pursue this formally? I want her to know I know, she said, but not yet. First, I want her to believe she's safe. She returned to the city under a new name. It wasn't legal fiction. It was strategy. Odessa Waverly became Lena Halloran, sole proprietor of an LLC registered 2 towns away from the Waverly estate. She opened an account, rented a small loft near the river, and began creating a shadow version of herself. A woman her mother wouldn't recognize, but would soon regret overlooking. Her first step, acquiring stake. Waverly & Co., the family's flagship interior design and staging business, had flourished after Lionel's death, largely under the curated leadership of Caroline and Elliot, whose combined charisma and inherited connections gave the illusion of integrity. Odessa knew better. The company was a well-dressed shell. She contacted a broker through Cassandra's network. Quietly, through her new identity, she began buying shares, enough to eventually earn a seat in the shadows of board discussions, enough to see their books, enough to know where the bodies were buried. Every step was silent. Every click of her laptop was a breadcrumb back to the empire her mother had tried to rewrite without her. Late one night, Odessa reviewed a quarterly report. She noticed something buried under consulting fees, a wire transfer to a familiar name, Barrow Financial Group. Her breath caught. It was the same firm Caroline had used 20 years ago to secure Odessa's trust fund, money Odessa never saw. Back then, it had been explained away with financial jargon and fatherly sighs. Now the pattern repeated. Different shell, same playbook. The line between negligence and malice had never been clearer. 2 weeks later, she watched from a distance as her mother arrived at a charity gala hosted by Waverly and Cockwoody. Caroline was radiant, dressed in deep emerald, flashing a smile that had disarmed judges, board members, and bankers alike. But not her. Odessa didn't attend. Not yet. She sent someone else, a courier, with a manila envelope. Inside, photocopies of the original trust, Lionel's final note, and the altered signatures side by side. No letter, no note, just evidence. And a post-it. You've been seen. The following morning, her mother called. No greeting, no hesitation. Odessa, what are you doing? I thought we weren't using that name anymore, she replied evenly. Silence. I should have expected this. You should have expected better. You don't know what you're inviting. You think this is about money? This family died a long time ago, Mother. You're making a mistake. No, Odessa said, voice cutting through the static like a blade. I'm just correcting one. She ended the call. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but adrenaline. The first strike had landed. Quiet, controlled, measured. This wasn't about theatrics. This was the slow extraction of a rotten root. She opened her laptop again. There was more to find. The invitation arrived on ivory cardstock, sealed with a gold W. Odessa didn't need to open it to know what it was. Her mother never missed a chance to host spectacle disguised as legacy. This time, it was a charity gala in honor of Lionel Waverley's philanthropic vision. That vision, of course, included none of his real intentions, and certainly none of his daughter. Odessa stared at the envelope a long time before sliding it into the drawer beside her desk. She didn't need an invitation to attend. She had already secured her presence in another way. The venue was the Sycamore Club, a glass and granite monstrosity reserved for the city's most unchallenged egos. Caroline had chosen it precisely for its reflective walls and echoing acoustics. Every compliment would reverberate, every whisper amplified. Odessa arrived an hour early, not in a gown, but in black slacks and a silk blouse, her hair pinned back, her presence inconspicuous. She walked through the service entrance, greeting staff like she belonged. Confidence had a way of unlocking doors. Arrogance thought were locked. She found the tech booth on the upper mezzanine. A young audio engineer was tinkering with slides. "Excuse me," she said, offering a flash drive. "These go in at the 32-minute mark. It's from the executive director. Last-minute change." The tech nodded, already overworked. "Got it. You sure about this file name?" She smiled, half-shadowed. "Absolutely." By the time the chandeliers were fully aglow and the guests began arriving in silk and arrogance, Odessa had already disappeared into the crowd. From the far corner of the ballroom, she watched her mother glide through the tables. Caroline was in deep sapphire tonight, hair swept into a severe knot, face lifted not by emotion, but by procedure. She greeted donors with warmth that never reached her eyes and laughed in tones designed to harmonize with wealth. The night unfolded in orchestrated decadence. Waiters moved like choreography, glasses clinked like rehearsed applause. Then, at the 32-minute mark, the lights dimmed. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced a voice from the podium, "in honor of the late Lionel Waverley's legacy, please enjoy this brief tribute." The screen above the stage lit up. It began with stills, images of Lionel in boardrooms, at groundbreakings, with Elliot and Caroline at press events. Standard legacy fare. Then it shifted. Video. Grainy but real. Lionel sitting on the porch of the Vermont house, his hands clasped. "If you're watching this," he said, voice quiet, "then I didn't make it." There was a pause in the room, a tightening. "I want to speak honestly. My name's been used to prop up a narrative that isn't true. My daughter, Odessa, was removed from the business and the family, not because she failed us, but because we failed her." Murmurs stirred in the crowd. "I let fear dictate silence. I let Caroline run the show. But she misused funds. She lied. And I let her. That's on me." The room froze. "Odessa, if you see this, I left you something. Not to fix what I broke, but to remind you that you were never the problem." The video ended. The silence after was total. Odessa didn't move. Neither did Caroline. It took a full beat before the audience shifted, confused, waiting for someone to claim it was doctored, that it was some twisted prank. But no denial came, not yet. Caroline walked toward the podium. Her face was composed, but her hands shook. She leaned into the microphone. "There appears to have been an error in programming," she said. "A lie. Another lie." Someone from the audience stood, a woman in legal gray. "My name is Cassandra Hume," she announced. "I represent Odessa Waverley, and I can assure you that footage is authentic, as are the documents now under federal review." The hush turned. Then the whispers. One of the city's major donors stood up and quietly excused himself. Another followed. A board member began texting under the table. Caroline's mask cracked then. Only slightly. A blink too long. A smile that died too quickly. Odessa stepped forward just enough to be seen. Their eyes locked. "Get out!" Caroline hissed, barely audible, voice trembling with rage. But she had already lost control of the room, of the story, of the legacy. Odessa said nothing. She didn't have to. The truth had arrived, wearing her father's voice. As she exited, a young woman brushed past her and whispered, "I've been through something like this. Thank you." Odessa didn't look back. She walked into the night, the chill against her face, the fire steady in her chest. This was not revenge. It was revelation. And it had only just begun. Odessa didn't remember falling asleep, only waking up. The Vermont house was silent, still bearing the scent of wood smoke from last night's fire. She lay still for a long time, not because she was tired, but because something inside her had shifted and she didn't want to disturb it. There had been no victory parade after the gala, no reporters at her door, no viral moments, despite the footage cascading through local media. The story had legs, yes, but she didn't feed it. She didn't post, tweet, or comment. She simply withdrew. Let the storm swirl somewhere else. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to explain herself to the world. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was space. Space to think, to breathe, to not be defined by Caroline Waverly's manipulations, or even Lionel Waverly's guilt. By noon, she was on the road. Not fleeing, moving. She sold her father's lake house, not the Vermont one, the one still linked to Elliot and the Waverly estate. Every cent of that sale went into a private fund registered under a nonprofit name, the Linden Project. Its mission was simple, but powerful: to fund and house creative women who'd been financially or psychologically displaced by family systems of control. She didn't make an announcement. There was no press release, just a quiet filing, a set of bylaws, and the renovation of an old inn 2 towns over, stone-walled, creaky-floored, with wildflower fields out back and no cell signal in half the rooms. Perfect. She handpicked every detail, not out of perfectionism, but healing. Soft linens in every room, books in every hallway, a recording studio in what used to be a wine cellar. She even commissioned a mural on the north wall, painted by a young artist who'd just left an emotionally abusive household. It featured a woman standing barefoot in water, holding a burning match, but not burning anything. When the girl asked Odessa what it meant, Odessa had just smiled. It means she finally realized she didn't need to set anything on fire to walk away. It was Cassandra who visited first, not as her lawyer this time, but as a quiet witness to what Odessa had built. "This place," Cassandra said, sitting with her on the porch as the sun dropped into the trees. "It feels like somewhere you come to remember who you were before you started surviving." Odessa sipped her tea, eyes following the light across the grass. "I don't need anyone to suffer," she said. "I just needed them not to win." "You could still take them to court," Cassandra offered. "The financial side alone." "I'm not chasing a headline," she cut in. "That's what Caroline would do. Feed the machine to prove a point." She paused. "I want something that lasts longer than their version of our story." At night, she began journaling again. Not for court records, not for memory, just for herself. She wrote letters she would never send. One to Elliot. One to the board members who looked away. One to the little girl version of herself who used to hide behind the laundry room door and pray not to be noticed. And one to her mother. She didn't know if she'd ever send it, but she wrote it anyway. "Dear Caroline, I used to think I needed your love to survive. Now I realize I only needed distance to understand what love isn't. I won't forgive you to make you feel better. I won't call what you did a lesson, but I release it, because I'm done performing grief over someone who isn't dead. You're still alive. And so am I. That's enough for me." Odessa. She tucked the letter in a drawer she never opened again. One afternoon, she stood in the main hall of the inn, now christened Linden House, and watched as 5 women carried in duffel bags, worn notebooks, and weathered eyes. None of them asked for her story, and she didn't offer it. They were here to begin their own. But one paused by the mural, pointing to the woman with the match. "She looks like she's about to do something," she said. Odessa smiled, just slightly. She already did. The envelope arrived without a return address. No official seal. No stamp from a correctional facility. Just cream paper, a handwritten name, and that unmistakable cursive. Odessa. She held it under the sunlight for a while, as if waiting for it to vanish. It didn't. So she opened it, alone, on the back porch of Linden House. The trees had gone nearly bare. Wind whispered between the rafters, and somewhere in the distance, a wind chime called out in uneven rhythm. She read the letter once, then again. Then she sat perfectly still, like someone watching a building fall down from the inside. Odessa, I assume you believe you've won, that whatever performance you orchestrated has rewritten the past, recast you as some tragic phoenix. I will not validate that fantasy. You embarrassed yourself more than you ever embarrassed me. Do you know what people say behind your back now? That you're emotionally unstable, that you crave attention, that everything you've built is a vanity project designed to mask your inability to hold real relationships. I saw that coming. I saw it when you were 12 and crying in front of strangers because someone forgot your birthday. I saw it when you demanded the world fit your version of fairness. Let me tell you what fairness is: survival. You were never suited for our world. And if your father gave you some backdoor escape, that only proves my point. You could never earn anything on your own. But enjoy the house. Enjoy your project. You'll outgrow it, just like everything else you chased when reality didn't bend to your will. And when you do, I hope you think of me. Because like it or not, you are still my daughter. And that will always mean something, whether you want it to or not. Caroline Odessa let the letter sit in her lap for a while. She didn't cry. She didn't curse. What she felt, more than anything, was confirmation. Confirmation that her mother had never once written to understand her. Only to preserve the myth of herself. Cassandra stopped by an hour later. She found Odessa barefoot on the porch, holding a small metal lighter. Another fire?" she asked softly. "Just a spark," Odessa replied, flipping the lid open. "You okay?" Odessa looked at her, eyes clear, voice calm. "She thinks the only way to win is to stay relevant in my mind. She doesn't know that I've already let her go." She held the letter to the flame. The edge curled, blackened, collapsed into itself. "She's still trying to parent me," Odessa said. "Even in exile, still trying to name me." "But you already named yourself," Cassandra said. Odessa smiled faintly. "No, I didn't. I stopped needing a name for what she broke. That's enough." They sat for a while, watching the smoke rise. Below them, the meadow swayed like it had all the time in the world. Later that night, Odessa returned to the letter drawer. She pulled out the unsent one she had written to her mother months ago. She reread it slowly, word by word, then folded it again, gently. She didn't burn it. Some silences didn't need to be loud. Some battles were won by not showing up. And some daughters become whole the moment they realize they don't need closure from people who profit off keeping them open. The chairs were mismatched. Some were folding metal, others wooden with chipped paint. Odessa liked it that way. It wasn't curated, it was real. Just like the women who filled the room, scars beneath sleeves, questions behind their eyes, strength built not from inspiration quotes, but from surviving mornings they didn't think they'd make it through. No stage, no lights, just a single microphone and a room full of people who had stopped pretending they were fine. Odessa stood in front of them, one hand wrapped loosely around a ceramic mug. The kind you use when you're not sure if you're going to talk or just breathe. "I used to think silence was safe," she began, voice low but steady. "That if I didn't speak, no one could twist what I meant." A pause. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. "But silence is a funny thing. It doesn't protect you. It just gives the loudest person in the room the microphone. She looked up. Not everyone met her eyes. That was okay. I come from a house where loyalty meant obedience, where love came with conditions, and the price was always your voice. I spent years performing for people who had already decided who I was allowed to be. There was no nodding, no gasps, just that stillness again, that quiet ache of being understood. When I stopped performing, they called me selfish. When I asked questions, they called me ungrateful. And when I finally walked away, they called me crazy. Another beat. But you know what no one called me? She let the silence answer. No one called me free. Until I did. A murmur passed like a breeze through the room. She took a sip of tea. Let it settle in. You don't owe anyone your silence, not even the people who gave you your name. That line landed. She could feel it. Afterward, she didn't stick around for applause. She never did. She walked out to the side porch, just as the light was fading into soft copper. The air smelled of lavender and old stone. She was about to sit when a shadow moved across the steps. Elliot. He looked thinner. The designer suit gone. A windbreaker. Soft sneakers. Unshaven. Hey, he said. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I'm not sure I do, Odessa replied honestly, but her voice wasn't sharp. He didn't flinch. He paused. I saw a video clip of your talk from the fundraiser. Then someone sent this one. I've watched them both more times than I want to admit. She waited. I never asked questions. I knew something was off, but I didn't want to lose everything. Mom said you were always dramatic, always needy, because I was the only one who didn't shut up. He nodded slowly. I didn't come for forgiveness, he said. Good, she replied, because I'm not handing it out like flyers. They both chuckled. A bitter laugh. Honest. I guess I just came to say, I believe you, all of it. She didn't smile, but something in her shoulders shifted. That doesn't fix anything, she said. I know, but it's a start. He looked up, relieved. They sat on the steps in silence. He stared out at the field. She looked at him, this brother who had once been a child beside her, and somehow ended up complicit in erasing her. Dad told you I was brave, didn't he? She asked softly. Elliot blinked. How'd you? You wear guilt like cologne. He gave a sad smile. He said it one night when I got caught cheating on a chemistry exam. He said, Odessa would have owned it. That's what scares your mother most. Odessa doesn't hide well. They sat for a long time, not fixing anything, but also not destroying it further. When he left, he said, You built something real here. I hope someday I do too. She didn't say goodbye. She just nodded. Later that night, alone in her recording room, she hit record. No script, just breath and voice. If you've been erased, rewritten, or reduced, this is for you. If they called you too loud, too much, too emotional, you were never too anything. You were just in the wrong room. She looked at the red light blinking. And if you're still in that room, leave. Even if it's slow, even if it's silent, even if the only person who walks with you is the one you're still learning how to be. She paused. Because someday someone's going to hear your story and whisper, I thought I was the only one. And in that moment, you'll have built a bridge without even knowing it. She saved the file. No hashtags, no captions, just truth. Outside, the wind carried through the trees. A few lights still flickered in Linden House. Somewhere, someone was probably writing the first words of their own story. Someone else was maybe burning their last apology. Odessa stood at the threshold of the porch, eyes open, chest steady. She didn't need to be remembered for what she had survived. She would be remembered for what she chose to do after. In the end, I didn't win by proving anyone wrong. I won by finally living without needing to be right in their eyes. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's that silence doesn't protect you, and love with conditions isn't love at all. You have a right to walk away. You have a right to begin again. And sometimes, healing isn't loud. It's choosing peace over being understood. What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild from a place you never asked to be torn down? If this story reached you, let me know. Drop a comment with where you're watching from or how it made you feel. And if you didn't connect with it, I'd love to know why too. If this video resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories that speak to the heart. Your voice matters here.